So Victoria, one of the reasons why I wanted to meet with you today is that every time I talk to somebody who's a musician, who's a music artist, or somebody that's been around live performing artists, your name comes up in conversation. Nice. Your name is always spoken of with a great deal of reverence and respect. And when I did research on you and I went to your website, one of the things that I discovered very quickly is that you are about your craft and about your business. And then I looked and I was like, of course she's about her business. She's got a bachelor's in classical piano performance. She's got a master's in classical piano performance from Stanford. Mm-hmm. So I'm like, of course she's going to be about her business because she's trained, she's dedicated, she's focused. So when I wanted to talk to you about live performance, about what an artist can do to prepare themselves to do the things that you've done. Mm-hmm. I wanted to talk to you about the insights that you can provide so that other people who want to become someone who backs up Stevie Wonder, who puts out their own CDs, who decides to go ahead and give vocal lessons and piano lessons. You wear all these different hats. You're doing this full time. You are a success. So really that's what the basis of the conversation is about. And I want to start with this one question. Mm-hmm. What motivated you to use classical piano as your basis?
I love it. That's really what drew me to classical. I started piano really young. I was maybe 2 years old when I started playing just by ear. Mm-hmm. And I started piano lessons at 12. And the teacher that I had was the first African-American piano instructor in the East Bay, as far as I know, Laura Toom Scott. And she was probably 85 when I started lessons with her. Wow. She lived at well over 100. And she exposed me to classical literature. And I fell in love with it. And so I played it because it was in my heart and I loved it. And I progressed from there. Okay.
And so with the classical training, clearly the emphasis on composition, arrangement, and theory, how has that benefited you in comparison to what you see people lacking who may not have that training?
Well, one, it provided a basis for technique.
Okay.
Right? Because to be able to approach the classical, especially the virtuoso literature, you have to have the technique to do it. Okay. So there's all sorts of training to prepare you for that. The theory prepares you to understand the music so that you can express it in a way that makes sense. Okay. And that feeds over into everything that I do.
Okay. So how do you go from Stanford getting the master's in classical piano performance to being on the road with 357? How does that work?
That happened because I responded to an advertisement for an audition. Okay. And I walked into the room. Like I said, I've been playing since I was about 2 by ear. So my ear is really good. Okay. And so that audition involved listening and playing back. So that's easy for me. Okay. And I'm a dancer too. So the fact that I could play and dance at the same time was to my advantage.
All right. Now, I didn't see any videos of you dancing online or anything.
Watch
but
the DVD.
Maybe some YouTube stuff, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
There's plenty of dancing with Stevie.
Okay. And so that situation with 357, how long did that last?
Just about 2 years.
Okay. And how did you enjoy it?
It was fun. Okay. Yeah, I toured all over the United States with them. We did a music video down in Los Angeles. Okay. I did a bunch of music festivals with them. It was a lot of fun.
And if you had to say the one lesson that you learned from that particular experience, what would it be?
As a touring musician, to remain focused. Okay. Because I won't name any names, but there are people who participate in lifestyles that weren't conducive to maintaining yourself on the road. So
speaking of the amount of time that you put in to practicing your craft, let's talk about that a little bit. How important is it for someone to spend time practicing their craft, and how much time do you recommend that they put into it?
I'll put it this way. In high school, I practiced 3 to 4 hours a day on top of coursework. And in college, I practiced 6 to 8 hours a day on top of coursework. So
6 to 8 hours a day?
A day, yeah.
Okay, so some people might say that that's a bit much, right?
People who don't understand what it takes.
People who don't understand what it takes to get to where you are and do the things that you've done.
Yeah.
So would you say that's normal? Or normal for
say-
people who have achieved like you?
Yes, normal for people who've achieved.
Okay.
Normal for the people that I know that I tour with, especially in their education phase. And then once you get to be a professional, there's other things to consider.
Okay.
But as a student,
Okay.
especially if you don't have to provide for yourself, if you live with parents or if you live at a college where, you know, your expenses are lower.
Right.
Take advantage of your time.
Right.
And don't go to the movies every night.
Okay.
Don't sit and watch TV.
Okay.
Practice.
So we're talking about discipline. We're talking about structure. We're talking about conscientious choice.
Yes.
Right. So one of the things that I've talked to people about in this series, and I actually talked to my students about at San Francisco State, is this whole law of 10,000 hours.
Yeah.
And people, it's pretty popular now, this notion.
Sure.
But one of the things that typically gets left out in those discussions is deliberate practice and the type of practice. So if you're putting in the 6 to 8 hours, what type of practice do you recommend people do so that they're practicing properly?
Well, if you're talking about an R&B artist,
R&B artist, somebody
classical,
who's, let's say piano, because that's your instrument.
Sure.
Okay.
Well, as a classical pianist, you want to practice your technical,
Okay.
right, so that you can play the virtuoso music, which is extremely difficult to do. Once you've gotten that out of the way, then you focus on expressing, to be able to play a particular pattern and have it sing, right? Because you don't want to play something robotically, right? You want to be able to play it in a way that it moves you first.
And that's where the emotiveness comes from.
Absolutely. So that feeling in your heart that you feel when you play is what you offer to the people that are listening too. So you have to practice that. You have to practice getting out of your head and getting out of the idea that I've got to get every single note right. Because that's irrelevant.
Yeah.
If that was important, people would watch robots play.
Right.
Okay?
Yeah.
But they want to have the feeling. You practice it technically so you can do it.
Right.
But then you have to also practice feeling it while you play it.
Now that's interesting you would say that, because I've actually heard singers talk about being too technical when they're actually, emoting certain vowels and sounds. But I've never heard someone talk about playing in such a robotic way to where that can be heard. I guess that's really a matter of being able to train the ear for that.
It's the same thing, like if you put it this way, when I talk to my students, I put it this way. If I'm talking to you with a monotone voice, it's not very interesting, is it?
No.
So I can still talk to you.
Right.
I've practiced enough that I can speak English pretty well.
Right.
And I can express myself and my voice can go up and down and it responds.
Right.
What I'm saying to you is based on what I feel.
Okay.
Right. So if I feel passionate about something, maybe my voice will go up. And I'll get a little louder. I'll gesticulate in a particular way, right? So that's emoting and expressing at the same time. And I'm using the technique of articulation. Right. And choosing my words consciously.
Right.
Right. So the same thing for music. So I practice the notes. I practice the dynamics, whether it's loud or soft.
Right.
Articulation, if I'm playing in a percussive way or in a smooth, even way.
Right.
But then, really, what is music? It's communicating. And
Expression.
anytime that you communicate, it has to involve expression if you want to be effective.
Right.
So, it's the same.
That works for me. That works for me. So, thank you for explaining that, because I definitely feel enlightened. And to the issue of practice, there's this one other component which I want you to speak to, which I think that not enough of the younger generation seeks out, and that's called feedback. So the whole 10,000 hours, deliberate practice, but you don't really hear people saying how important it is to get feedback. Who are the people that have given you feedback that has benefited you, and how important is it to get that feedback?
It's crucial. I heard someone once say, Tiger Woods is still considered the greatest golfer probably ever. And he has a coach.
Okay.
Right. So I go get coaching now and then, just because it's good to have that feedback. Growing up, my teachers, Eugene Gash was excellent. Janice Maxey Reed, an excellent teacher. Bill Bell, excellent. In college, I had Zedmara Zakarian Rutstein, a Russian lady. She was my teacher. And she'd
be proud of how you said her name, too. She'd be very proud.
Я говорю немножко по-русски.
Oh, yes. Yes.
A little bit Russian.
Yes.
But anyway, all those people gave me great feedback, and I remember at Zedmara at Oberlin, at my first lesson, when I played for her, she said to me, and I thought that I did great. You know, I was a little star here in the Bay Area in the Young Musicians program when I was a teen. And after I played for her at my first lesson, she said to me, "How did you get in? You're not good enough."
Really?
She did. That was quite some feedback, right?
Whoa.
So I took that feedback, and sure, it hurt, but I wanted it enough that I made it my point to prove to her that she was wrong.
Oh, that got your motivation,
she did that on purpose.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. So it just made me work.
Okay.
And maybe that's what I needed to hear.
Nice. So I would be remiss if I didn't ask you, how did the whole connection with Stevie Wonder come about? Like, when did that happen? How did it happen? And how have you enjoyed that experience?
In August 2007, I came out of my yoga class, because I'm a yogi.
Okay.
And I had a text message from someone saying, "Call this phone number. Stevie Wonder's looking for a keyboard player." And I thought, this must be a joke. So I went home, I called the number, and it turned out to be legitimate.
Okay.
And the way that I even got considered was I had a MySpace page, which was the big deal at the time. And I reached out to a lot of people in the industry, and I had little clips of me playing classical music on it.
Okay.
And so I went to LA.
Okay.
And I auditioned with there were 9 of us all together. So I auditioned with 8 other people. And everyone else there had resumes in the R&B world, you know. And I was coming from that very week playing with the Oakland Symphony Chorus. Playing classical music.
A little different background.
A little different. But as I said earlier, I have a very developed ear.
Right.
So I can hear and play pretty much anything I hear. And that was to my advantage. And again, being a dancer, I can feel music, right, in a way that is to my advantage.
Right.
So I went and auditioned for 4 days. And each day, fewer and fewer people were invited back.
Okay.
And on that last day, August the 13th, 2007.
Oh, you remember vividly.
How could I forget? That really was a great day. I was told that I got the job.
Nice. So there was this weeding out process. And so you've been with him now for 6 years?
Oh, it'll be 6 years in August.
6 years. And so how has that experience improved you as a musician?
I see the fact that he has a keyboard everywhere he goes. And he's constantly playing, constantly working on new compositions.
Right.
Practicing. He does vocal exercises. He's Stevie Wonder. And he practices. So for all the young artists out there that think that they don't have to work, no.
Because you get to a certain level.
Right. No, you don't understand. He's beyond the top. He could have retired 20 years ago.
Right. Right.
But he still pushes it. He still sings everything in the original keys. Who does that?
Right.
You know? So his work ethic, his heart that he shares with every audience that we perform for, that he shares with us in the band, we're like a family.
Wow.
And it's a beautiful thing. So I learn a lot from just being around him and the other musicians in the band. Everyone is extremely talented.
So Victoria, give me like 3 takeaway tips that people who are aspiring to do the things that you've done, 3 things that they can do to make that possible.
Sure. Okay. The first tip is be prepared. Practice, and then practice more. Then, once you think you have it, practice again.
Back to practice, right?
Absolutely.
Gotcha.
You can't get away from that. There's no way around it. All right. The second tip is override your ego. Treat people with respect. Be humble, professional, and on time.
On time.
I can't tell you how many people have been fired because they lacked respect, lacked humility, lacked professionalism, and were late consistently. Don't be late. Be on time.
Sounds good.
Yep. The third tip is work hard. A successful music career is far more difficult than you could imagine. It is more challenging than having a regular job. It is more demanding than many other careers and requires a devotion, discipline, and focus that is unrelenting and unsustainable for most people. But if you do the work, few careers are as satisfying.
Wow. That's good stuff.
Good.
So thank you so much for the time that you've given us today, because I know you probably got some practice you need to do.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. So thank you much for your time, and I look forward to seeing you in concert.